Hey guys, here with another one take review, as well as the fifth part in my Rock Hall review series, where I review one album by each of the current year's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominees. Today I am talking about the only true metal act that is on the ballot this year, Judas Priest, with their, classic album, British Steel. British Steel is probably the most commercially notable Judas Priest album. I mean, obviously, there are other albums that both fans and critics tend to like more, like Screaming for Vengeance and Painkiller, but British Steel is just a wildly successful album with some of the band's most popular songs, and there really are a very select few metal albums to truly cross over into the mainstream, or at least sort of pop culture history, but British Steel is one of those few. I do think that a lot of that commercial success attributes to the fact that this is probably one of Priest's most just straightforward metal albums, and by that I mean there is no sort of subgenres of metal kind of added in. You don't see that touch of progressiveness that was on Stained Class, or the sort of speed and even thrash metal that influenced Painkiller later on. There's no real influences here beyond just straight up hard rock and metal, and that's for better or for worse, in my opinion. On one hand, I mean, the band are just great at being just straightforward metal performers. I mean, that's what they were when they started with Rock and Roller. But at the same time, I just kind of feel like sticking to that same style of metal kind of can result in a very uninteresting sound. Not necessarily a bad sound, just uninteresting. And I do think that shows through here on occasion, at least. First things first, though, the most noteworthy member of Judas Priest, in terms of popularity at least, is without a doubt their lead singer, Rob Halford. And I mean, Halford is rightfully seen as a just really fantastic, iconic vocalist in metal. He's just an incredibly powerful performer, and songs like "You Don't Have to Be Old to Be Wise" are absolutely defined by his vocal performances. But at the same time, I will say that British Steel does kind of lack the soaring heights that he would reach on other records, and I do feel like even though Rob Halford is a strong performer here, that he would just deliver much more powerful, strong performances on records both before and after this album, which is something that's sort of uncommon. Generally, if a vocalist does something uninteresting on one album, the following albums are equally uninteresting. But if you look at pre-British Steel albums like, say, Sin by Sin or Stained Class, you have songs like Beyond the Realms of Death and other tracks that are just really great, strong vocal performances from Halford. But after British Steel, you've still got stuff like Head Out on the Highway or the Painkiller album as a whole that just really see him probably actually soar completely above even previous works beforehand, like some of their earlier, more well known albums. And it just makes it really surprising to not really hear anything particularly impressive in terms of vocal work. I mean, it is impressive in the way that Halford does complement the instrumentals very well, but I just don't think that this is his strongest work, even if it is very good. Also noteworthy as performers are guitarist KK Downing and Glenn Tipton. Of course, alongside other early hard rock kind of bands like Thin Lizzy, Judas Priest were one of the first bands to sort of make use of that twin guitar sound. And even though British Steel was released over a decade into the band's career, which I do think a lot of people kind of tend to forget, the kind of style sounds still very, very fresh. It doesn't sound like it's something that's just being used for the sake of making people go, "Oh, hey, that sounds like Judas Priest." It actually does sound like a fresh concept, even this many years into the band's career. And both guitarists really do shine in rhythmic and lead positions. Well, I can't really say that Tipton and Downing are the most dynamic per se duo in terms of early rock and metal, or hard rock, I should say, and metal music. I will at least say that they do complement one another very well, and they do some just great guitar work, especially in terms of riffs throughout British Steel. Rounding out Judas Priest as an actual band are at the time drummer Dave Holland, as well as longtime bassist Ian Hill, and the two are a solid rhythm section. They're about all you can really ask for. Of course, they're not absolutely insane performers that'll blow your mind or anything, but Dave Holland keeps rhythm, and Ian Bass has some solid rolling bass lines throughout the record. It's really all you could ask for from an album like British Steel, or a band like Judas Priest for that matter. While the sort of rhythm instrumentals may be very punchy and at least fun, that kind of does bring me to my final point, which is there isn't any crazy bass work here, like, say, Steve Harris from Iron Maiden. There's no crazy drumming here, like Rust in Peace era Megadeth or anything like that. It's just sort of a normal metal, and I do think, again, for in some ways that works. Judas Priest understand what they're doing, and they do it well. But at the same time, I can't help but feel that there are other more adventurous albums that the band made both before and afterward that really let them showcase their talents more. And as it stands, even though I do think British Steel is a very good sort of gateway album into metal as a genre, I don't really think it's a great gateway album into the sound of Judas Priest as a band. Overall, however, I do think that this is still a great record. This is kind of the same energy that you would find in a bar filled with bikers at like 11 o'clock at night. It's, it's aggressive, it's energetic, it's anthemic, it's kind of maybe a touch self aware, and that it's kind of better for it. It's not overly serious or anything like that, and that's really all you can ask for from an album like this. It's performed extremely well. Instrumentals are tight, they don't sound sloppy or not well performed. Everything is done as well as it can be, and that's the most you can really expect from an album like British Steel or a band like Judas Priest, at least in the early 80s when this album came out in 1980. This isn't a masterclass in any sort of instrument, not even vocal work or any sort of anything really. It's not a masterpiece, but it is simply put Judas Priest, and well, Judas Priest are great. So this is a great album, and with that being said, I am going to give British Steel a 4 out of 5 stars. Now, this is normally where the review ends, and I just kind of sign off and tell you guys to watch my next video. But this is the Rock Hall review series, so I'm going to be talking about whether I think Judas Priest deserve to be in, and if they will get in. Now, in terms of deserving to be in, come on, yes, absolutely. They are arguably the metal band. I mean, if you walk up to a person on the street and you ask them to name the first metal band that comes to mind, if at least if they're a casual metal fan, they're either going to say Metallica or Judas Priest, and Metallica is already in, and Metallica only have 3 good albums, so, I mean, come on. In all seriousness, though, Judas Priest really are one of the few mainstream metal bands, and I do think there's something to be said for that. Metal as a genre is arguably sort of a niche, even for as popular as many people would consider it to be. It is still to this day sort of a niche, and just as much of a niche as it was in the late 70s and early 80s, especially. So the fact that British Steel is sort of a example of a metal band crossing over into the mainstream conscience, I do think that is a very important thing to note, and the fact that they not only sort of popularized metal within a group of people that were very much not into metal at the time, at least not for the most part. Judas Priest are an incredibly influential band as well. I mean, come on. That sort of twin guitar sound mixed with those rolling bass lines and those really heavy but mostly simple riffs, those inspired so many metal bands. I mean, really, you can actually just go on and on with a list of metal bands alone that Judas Priest ended up inspiring. But I mean, really, from even the hair metal of the 80s with Twisted Sister and Def Leppard, up into even arguably sort of modern metal with bands like Dream Theater and whatnot, do have at least some notes that they have taken from Judas Priest over the years to different extents. I mean, you could even say that some non traditionally metal bands like Queens of the Stone Age, being the sort of garage stoner rock band that they are, still have taken some influence from Judas Priest over the years with their instrumentation style. So really, I think Judas Priest are maybe at least slightly underestimated as how influential they truly are, and as such, I do think that they are one of the most deserving bands on the ballot this year, and plus, the only 2 metal bands in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame right now are Black Sabbath and Metallica, and while they are two of the quintessential metal bands, I do think that Judas Priest deserve to be mentioned as well. As for if they'll get it or not, it's hard to say, in my opinion. Actually, I think a lot of people are immediately just dismissing them as a big no, but it's hard to say, in my opinion. Like I said before, there are only 2 metal bands in the hall. Black Sabbath had to get nominated so many times that Ozzy Osbourne even asked them to take them off the ballot at one point because they weren't inducting them. Metallica took more than one shot, which I'm not even a huge Metallica fan, but that's one more shot than you really should be taking to induct what is probably the most commercially successful metal band of all time. So It's really just, it's kind of difficult to say. This is the third time Priest have been nominated. They got nominated before, and I think it was 18 and 20. Last year, they got replaced on the ballot by Iron Maiden and Motorhead, which I do think was a big issue for the two of them. They probably split votes, also arguably with Thin Lizzy as well, who also didn't get in, I should say. And I think that it's if Judas Priest doesn't get in this year, they're not going to go on the ballot next year. I think they'll probably get replaced with Maiden or Motorhead again or Thin Lizzy again, even maybe. Just talking about early hard rock bands. But if Priest do get in this year, I think that's going to break down some walls for metal bands in the future, at least to some extent. I think that Priest and Maiden, if Priest gets in this year, I think that Maiden will get in within the next couple of years, and from there you'll have to see because really that's an entirely different bag if you want to talk about like 90s metal with Pantera and stuff. But I think Priest maybe have a chance this year. I'm not gonna say for sure. There's a lot of artists that are gonna get in, especially or have a big chance of getting in, I should say, especially when considering the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has a love for those singer-songwriter types. Which I mean, you have like Carly Simon on the ballot this year. You've also got Eminem on here, who is basically and immediately going to take up a spot. You've got other artists that are very beloved and respected musicians, even if they're not super commercially successful, like Beck and Kate Bush. So overall, it's difficult to say, but there has been a lot more speaking up from the metal community in recent months and arguably years of there not being enough metal representation in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Randy Rhoads did just get a musical excellence, I think it was, award with this past induction ceremony. So I mean, who knows? Maybe they're starting to focus on metal musicians slightly more, and I think they have a shot this year, at least more of a shot than they did the prior 2 years that they were nominated during. But anyways, yeah, Judas Priest absolutely deserved to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, one of the most deserving bands on the ballot this year, which is saying something considering pretty much every act on the ballot this year has at least some credentials, and they might get in, maybe, and maybe not this year. I think they'll get in eventually. They have to get in eventually, basically, somehow. Whether it be musical excellence, which the Rock Hall seems to be using a little more openly now with the induction of Kraftwerk, but they deserve to be in. They might get in. They probably will get in eventually. They might not get in this year, but they probably will get in eventually. And British Steel is a great album. I give it 4 stars out of 5. And with that being said, that is the end of this entry in my Rock Hall review series. Join me next time for the sixth entry, where I talk about pretty much the only new romantic band that everyone can agree, or most people can agree, is actually pretty cool, Duran Duran. So I'll be talking about them next time, but until then, that is the end of this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.